The city of Seattle is self-imploded. And I really believe what we're seeing is cause and effect. We are seeing now the unfortunate result of policies that we knew were bad to begin with, at least those of us who aren't highly ideological. We are seeing the unfortunate but realistic result, the expected result of policies that were built on identitarianism, policies that were meant to make just a small number of fringe activists feel good, policies that were pushed because fringe activists would show up on the second floor of City Hall and just scream and whine until they got their way, and you had absolute gelatinous backbones of city council members that gave way to them. And so unfortunately what you're seeing is a downtown Seattle that is in a state of ruin and that I don't see getting better unless there is a significant change of course when it comes to the quote-unquote leaders who voters are putting in office. And so you might not think that this story is the end-all be-all, but it is symptomatic of a pattern and of the continued downfall of a once great city. So in the Seattle Times today, the announcement that PCC is going to close its downtown Seattle store due to what they're saying is poor sales. Of course, there's a lot of contributing factors to poor sales, because why would a grocery store in the heart of a city that has not very many grocery stores, why would that grocery store not be able to succeed financially? There's really no reason for it except that everything around it isn't succeeding financially. Everything around it is having an issue thriving because of policies. And so again, it's symptomatic, according to the Seattle Times, and what PCC says the rationale is, with remote work still reducing the number of workers downtown and with fewer than expected downtown residents, the PCC was never able to generate the kind of foot traffic or sales necessary to turn a profit, co-op officials said. Quote, based on these dramatically changed shopper demographics and habits, PCC sees no viable path to operating a profitable full-service grocery store at this location, the co-op said in a statement on Wednesday. Despite an amazing team, fantastic store conditions, and a supportive landlord, our downtown store has unfortunately remained unprofitable, and we do not see that changing for the foreseeable future, their CEO said in this statement. Reaction to this has been swift. There's a lot of people, and there are people who live downtown, and like I said, there are not a lot of options for them to actually go to a brick and mortar grocery store, certainly one they can walk to, and so I was seeing online a lot of people angry about this for that reason. But it's also not good for the economic vitality of the city. Councilwoman Sarah Nelson, one of the only council members in Seattle with a good head on her shoulders, I wish we had 8 more of her. She said, this is terrible news for downtown, and I'm sure I speak for many downtown workers to say nothing of neighborhood residents when I say thank you, PCC, for serving us, and I'm sorry to see you go. Grocery stores have narrow margins as it is, and independent stores have even less reserves to weather the market forces driving up the cost of business. This is a sobering reminder that city officials must do everything we can to ensure that conditions within our purview contribute to a thriving business climate, starting with public safety. And I agree with her. I mean, there's a plethora of things going on here. Public safety is absolutely one of them. I mean, do people feel safe actually walking into a grocery store, walking to a grocery store in downtown Seattle, shopping there? We know that all retail environments have had an issue with widespread retail theft, which is fueled by the drug crisis, retail theft rings that are certainly, a grocery store is not immune from that. But there's one other big glaring thing, and that has been an anti-business climate. One thing that was mentioned in this story, but also is clearly a causing factor, this PCC is in a building that should have been occupied by a bunch of Amazon workers. But there was news, this was back in February of 2019, that this particular building, Amazon abandons plans to occupy huge downtown Seattle office building. It says that, again, this is from the 2019 article. Scheduled to open next year, the $570 million Rainier Square Tower project will be the second tallest building in the Pacific Northwest at 58 stories. It will also include luxury apartments and a hotel, as well as a PCC community markets on the ground floor. So here you had Amazon that was supposed to be occupying this gigantic office building, which certainly would have brought a lot more customers into the PCC to make it profitable. And why did Amazon opt not to do that? Well, the same reason that Amazon decided to start pulling workers out of its Seattle location and sending them over to Bellevue, or opening job openings in Bellevue as opposed to Seattle, reducing its footprint in Seattle. Because of not just an anti-business climate in Seattle, but a vilification of Amazon for the past 8 years. The repeated efforts to tax Amazon, which ultimately were successful. The city council had tried what they called a head tax on big business, to fine big business essentially for every employee that it had. The council eventually passed that. They had to roll it back and undo it. And then in 2020, right when the city was recovering from Chaz Chop and in the midst of this summer of love, as the mayor called it, with all these riots and looting, well, the city was focused on all of that. What did the council do? Well, they used that environment, that political environment, to push through a tax on high-paying jobs, completely under the radar, because everybody else was distracted by the other craziness happening in the city. And what was a tax on high-paying jobs really about? It was about taxing Amazon. And so, I mean, if you can't see the cause and effect of all this, and reasonable common sense people, they saw this as it was happening. They saw the slow motion train wreck that was going to come. So this really isn't a surprise to anyone with a lick of common sense. You vilified the city's largest employer repeatedly. You targeted them out repeatedly. When they passed the tax on high-paying jobs, what did Amazon do? They didn't try to fight it. They didn't put out a press release condemning it. They just started moving jobs to Bellevue, and they started increasing their footprint in a city that they thought would be a better partner with them. And actually, that's working out great for Bellevue. Not so great for Seattle. So they, in 2019, while they're being vilified, they decide, because 2019, it was before the tax on high-paying jobs, but it was after, many years of the Seattle City Council vilifying Amazon and the decline of the downtown environment, which was also happening, by the way, before the pandemic. And so Amazon said, hey, we're not going to occupy this huge downtown office building that's going to have a PCC on the bottom floor. And then what happens? Okay, 4 years after that, the PCC now saying, hey, we're not getting enough business to be able to operate. So the anti-business animus, the anti-Amazon animus, is responsible in large part for this. But yeah, also the crime. Also the fact that downtown Seattle just doesn't feel like a very visitable location still. And that has not changed substantially. And I'm not saying Mayor Bruce Harrell hasn't done some things to try to improve that, but we don't have enough police officers to have a frequent police presence in these areas to make it feel safe for people. I mean, how many horrible stories have we done of regardless of what the gray-haired lady with the green coat said on Fox News, how many stories of random acts of violence have we seen downtown? So yeah, and this is what I'm worried about too. What's next? What's next? I've said it before, and I really pray it's not the case. Nordstrom's. Is it Nordstrom's or Nordstrom? Didn't we already have this debate? Yes. No S. You think I shopped there enough to know there's no S. Nordstrom, downtown. I would not be surprised if we're hearing about Nordstrom closing in the next couple of years. I have no inside knowledge of that, but Target on 2nd Avenue. Again, half the time I go down there, it's all boarded up because windows were broken. The level of shoplifting there is absolutely insane. I've gone in there and you just see people openly who you're like, okay, obviously they're filling that cart and they're just going to push it out. It's insane. So, and then when you lose these places that really are anchors, it was remember when Starbucks closed there across from Westlake Park? That was kind of an anchor in that area where there was actually business coming in and people would go there and it was a destination. You'd meet by the Starbucks at Westlake Park, and then they had to close and they cited crime. Come on. I mean, this isn't rocket science. If there's any council member or the mayor or anyone who wants to deny what's going on here, this isn't just decisions made in the last year or two or the pandemic. This is a decade worth of decisions that's catching up to a once great city. It's going to take forever to unwind, but you have to start somewhere. And I think you start with, if you care about the city, Seattleites. I wish I could vote in Seattle. I don't live there anymore. There's a reason for that. But if you can vote prioritizing, yes, people who share your values, all the candidates share your values. They're all just different shades of blue. But people who also want to make sure the city thrives. And it's breaking my heart to see those candidates, vilified. Right-wingers called Republicans. It's just stupid. It's like, no, they're Democrats. And is it really a Republican value to want there to be economic viability Is it really a Republican value to want public safety? That's kind of funny when you think about it. That like any Democrat who dares prioritize public safety or want to be friendly to businesses big and small, that they must be a Republican. Oh, well that makes being a Republican sound very, very good. Very like rational and common sense. It's just wild stuff.